What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Sonic Movie Show, the only show that's about Sonic news, and Sonic movie news, and other things. My name is Ethan, and with me to fight in the streets, I don't have anything better, is Devin.
Quick, change the channel.
That is a good one. I remember that one. Zangief said that in the Street Fighter movie, released in the year of 1994, for a just under $100 million box office of $99.4 million, where we watched this movie, and we are immediately recording this right now.
It's fresh. Literally, we finished it.
Fresh thoughts.
5 minutes
I didn't even
ago.
turn the TV off. It still says no signal. Let me turn that off. There we go.
Yep.
Sony Bravia.
We're also recording in the Sonic Movie Show studio.
Yes.
We have all the stuff.
We got the light on.
The on-air light.
Yep, it's just one of those weird... Devin got it for me. One of those, like, plexiglass panels you stick into a thing that glows light from a base.
It looks like styrofoam, but it's not.
Yeah, it's weird, and it kind of is kind of like styrofoam.
I'm saying, like, I feel like if I grabbed it, it would just crumble in my hands.
You can't really reach, but yes. In any case, enough about the light that you can't see. I moved the microphone down. We watched Street Fighter, and it was a movie. And now we're going to talk about the movie. So let's first start off with something I always kind of like to do. Have we actually played these games? Do we know much about the thing that the movie's based off of? I feel like we've not really done it the past few times, but to be fair, we've done like Resident Evil and then Mario. Everyone knows Mario.
We talked about Resident Evil though in the very first
one, right?
So and we've seen enough of those that we realize that this has nothing to do or even close to the video game besides like,
this
character name.
We might as well just be watching a movie franchise.
Yeah.
Mario, everyone knows Mario. Hitman, I think we talked a bit about. And then we went, in the Mortal Kombats and stuff. And then Resident Evil again. And Monster Hunter. But yes, we're talking about Street Fighter. This is one of the earliest video game movies. Basically, before the Mario one, which we did a couple episodes ago, there is one movie in between that and this. This predates Mortal Kombat, which was one of our very first ones we did for this podcast. And is kind of, I don't want to say set a standard of like, all right, there's going to be a whole bunch of fighting game movies, but there kind of is a whole lot of fighting game movies. I don't know how many of them are live action or not, but there's quite a bit. And I feel like you can almost kind of see, even though Mortal Kombat was a year later, a different type of approach from that, maybe even learning from this. Because the one thing I will say is, for the most part, not a lot of fights in the Street Fighter movie. Up until the very end, then it's like, all right, we're starting to get these all out rapid pace. Guile, Bison,
and
Ryu,
you
Vega.
can hate on the Mortal Kombat movies easily. There's a lot of things that are not good in those films. At least they attempted to have fights that felt like every 15 minutes. For this movie, there really was no fights. There was more guns.
This was like just a 90s action movie.
Yeah, it was an action movie.
Which isn't a bad thing.
No.
But it just has the characters.
But you're right. There's like a weird improvement. Not a weird improvement, but just like an improvement from just that year in what Mortal Kombat is. Where they're like, no, we gotta make sure we have fights in this, because I'm assuming people probably didn't like that Street Fighter didn't have many fights.
See, I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna err on the side of probably saying yes, but I feel like audiences back then, especially kids going to see it, weren't necessarily like, this wasn't exactly like the games, but more of like, wow, look, Guile had a gun, Cammy, had a gun. I think it was more of that kind of stuff. I can imagine that.
Yeah, I meant more just like, I was expecting, we've seen this movie before, we should say that. We've seen this movie
I don't remember any of it.
I remember like 2 scenes. I don't remember the plot or anything,
Mm-hmm.
so pretty much this is new to me. I think it was like a good 10 years ago we watched that movie, because I remember we watched it for another podcast that we were listening to at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I was not necessarily disappointed, but just kind of like, oh, there really is no fights in this.
Yeah.
For a movie that's called Street Fighter. Like, at least with Mortal Kombat, like, if you know nothing about Mortal Kombat, you won't know it. You hear combat, you're like, that could mean many things. That could be war. That could be us fighting to the death. It can mean a lot of different things. When I hear the word fighter, I specifically think of fists or like some sort of hand-held weapons.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I did remember liking this movie, even though I don't remember anything about it. And obviously I really do like Street Fighter, so I'm biased in that sense. But I did enjoy the movie as just a dumb action movie. Some of the acting was from, like, supporting actors was kind of eh. But for the most part, I'm like, there's nothing really bad about this. It's just, it's a dated action movie and it's fun. Some of the characters in a lot of video game movies, especially of like the pre-2000s, maybe even pre-2010s, really, aren't actually the way that they are in the games. Some of these, like, characters don't even have the same, like, country of origin or profession that they do in the games, right? Chun Li isn't a reporter, she's Interpol. You know, E Honda isn't from Hawaii, he's from Japan. That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. This movie was...
I want to say, by the way, I've played like a Street Fighter game here and there, but like I've never owned one. I didn't know shit about any of the characters. If you gave me, like, it showed me all the pictures of them and tell me you gotta name them, I'd probably get like 2 right. Honestly. Like, I'm like, I forgot Ken exists. That's how much I don't know about Street Fighter.
Ken is every American's first...
I know Ryu.
Yeah.
And I don't remember I know what some of them look like. Like, if you gave me a list, maybe I could maybe...
Chun Li, you would know.
I know Chun Li, yeah.
Everyone knows Chun Li.
But, like,
he's got gigantic
I've
legs.
seen Bison before, but I didn't know he was called Bison. That's what I'm saying. Like, some of these guys look familiar at certain parts of the film. Some of them, you had to tell me who they were, and you showed me, like, pictures of them. I'm like, oh, I never would have known.
Dhalsim doesn't look anything like him until the very end, but he's not a scientist in the games, but he is in this movie. There's a lot of that stuff going on. I'm a big Street Fighter fan, but I'm not one of those, like, I know the whole lore, because for the most part, like, the game stories are kind of dumb. Fighting
games lore in general, I feel like, is either overly complicated or doesn't take itself too seriously, so you shouldn't either. You can just know, like, general stuff, like in Mortal Kombat, for me, I like Mortal Kombat a lot, but there's too much of it that I'm just like, I don't give a fuck. Like, all I know is Scorpion's brother is Sub-Zero at one point. Cool, that's all I need to know. Right. I don't give a fuck what happened afterwards. Sub-Zero good or bad, whatever.
To me, it's like, it's cool.
Shao Kahn bad.
It's cool when it's like, oh, in Street Fighter 3, which takes place furthest in the timeline, Ken is training this young Brazilian man to fight like him. So that's how you get another character that plays just like Ken and Ryu, but he's like, the lore is that he's training this kid, what was his name? I forget his name. It's not Ed or something. I don't know. But it's like that kind of stuff. Like, those are kind of cool. But for the most part, like, the story in Street Fighter is all over the place because the games aren't in chronological order. You have, like, most of, like, the story takes place in a prequel game just to kind of make context for 2, and then, like, it technically goes Alpha 1, 2, 4, 5, 3.
I wouldn't know. You could be making shit up to me right now, and I've been like, yeah.
And it's like, cool, but, like, Bison is the villain in this movie, and he is the villain in Street Fighter 2, for sure. And
he looks like a villain. He looks like he should be a villain in any... Like, if I had to make a movie, if you just show me the cast of characters, like I said, knowing nothing about them, I probably would make him at least up there and for the bad guy, not the number one guy, which he is in this film.
Technically, his name, in terms of how the games nowadays categorize him, because Balrog, Vega, and M. Bison have their names swapped depending on what country you live in, over trying to avoid legal disputes over Mike Tyson. His official name really is just Dictator. His Dictator, Claw, and Boxer are the names that they give them.
That's what they should have done.
In the game files.
He's like, I'm Dictator. That's what he should have said. First line of the movie.
But Bison is a good name for a dictator, at least the way that it's done in the games and movies. He's like the bad guy, but then, like, Street Fighter 3, the villain is literally the Illuminati, and a guy that's in control of the Illuminati.
The ill. Oh, boy.
And then Street Fighter 4, which take place right after Street Fighter 2, is like another guy. So, like, Bison isn't really like the series bad guy, but the story is kind of like he once had it, now he's fucking old news, and he's like trying to get it back, but he's dying. Like, that's the kind of cool arc that he has, but it's not really done when he's the bad guy.
Gotcha.
So for here, it is just Dictator, which is cool. And Raul Julia does a good job.
So like, he kind of is like that, like... So I don't know how much from the movie, but like, was he always wearing like red and black? Are they trying to?
For sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
because to me, it like definitely gave me like not Nazi vibes, but like bad guys wear this color
He is
aesthetic,
definitely,
you know.
From, like, I don't know, the movie says Shadaloo's a country. I don't think it is. Shadaloo's just the organization. I don't actually know where they're located, though, in the games. His stage in Street Fighter 2 is Thailand, which is clearly where they decided they were going to make Shadaloo a part of in this movie.
Yeah.
But, like, that's just because they wanted to have a Thailand stage. Not necessarily because that's where he's from. Sagat ended up, like, kind of taking that Thailand stage.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, this movie has pretty much all of the characters from Street Fighter 2. I'm not sure. This movie came out in 94. When did Alpha start? Because they name drop, essentially, an idea of a character, but they combine him into another one. But basically, this is the cast of Street Fighter 2 in this movie. I can't think of anyone that's not in this movie that's from Street Fighter 2. It's like everyone.
Well, you had the full cast at the end of the movie, spoilers, doing poses.
Doing the poses.
So I guess you could look at that. But, no, I mean, like I said, I didn't know too many characters. So, like, who was in it and who wasn't. I mean, from my point of view, I did like this movie a lot. I remember watching it back in the day and not liking it, or clearly not remembering it, so maybe not memorable in that way. But, like, I actually liked the latter half of this movie. It's cheesy as fuck, but in a good way. And honestly, I'm a Mortal Kombat homer a little bit sometimes. I think I like this one more than Mortal Kombat.
It's definitely better than the second Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm biased enough to just say I do like this more than the Mortal Kombat first movie, but that movie was also cheesy and not necessarily bad, but there is a quality to it. And there's a different quality to this one where it's like, this one
felt like a bigger budget, too.
I can see that.
It just, does it?
It just feels like, I only have their box offices down.
I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
There's like,
or at least
more
they use their money
sets
better.
and shit.
More sets, because like in Mortal Kombat, there was some sets. Don't get me wrong, there was some cool shit in it. But
They
they used a lot
like it
of.
could have been natural.
Yeah, and they went for a lot of like digital effects, which make the movie feel even more dated. Like this movie, it looks dated, but at moments it also looks like I'm like, oh, this could have came out in like late '90s instead of early '90s.
So $35 million is the budget on Street Fighter.
You might have to put 1995 for Mortal Kombat, yeah.
We looked this up.
18 million? Yeah.
Yeah, 18 million. Yeah, so this had a much bigger budget, even though this came out a year prior. I don't know why I went back.
I mean, it's almost double. It's double
right.
of the money. So, but yeah, like they had like actual like sets, and they made sure to like reuse them in ways that I will say this: the direction of this film, like the cinematography specifically, was actually a lot better than I was expecting. Like there was some really cool cuts that we noticed that like they easily could have just done a straight cut or like a fade out or something like that.
And there were some like that for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying they're bad, but I'm saying like everyone does that. Like no matter if you're a good director or a bad director, people usually know how to cut. You don't get to that level of success if you don't know how to cut.
Right.
Or the editors don't get to that level, but the directors also work on that part as well. But, yeah, there's some really cool, like, cuts where, like, I remember at one point it zoomed in on the tattoo of the guy.
Yep.
But then it was actually a different character at a different scene. I'm like, that's cool. Like, those small things I really appreciate.
Yeah.
But they used parts where they did good storytelling. Like, there was one part that I noticed where they were going through like the gym area of the
locker room,
of the evil base, and I'm like, okay, cool. They're like, I'm like, this locker room looks like it's fucking awesome. Like, I don't like working out. I want to work out there. Like, that's the kind of energy I was getting from there. Like, this is cool. And later on, they have a fight scene there. And I think they made sure to use like the same kind of shots that they were showing that. So they didn't feel like they were just showing that to be cool. Like, no, this is going to be a place where people are going to fight later. So we want to make sure we show that. Cause they easily could have just done another set of just cement walls, be like, cause it's underground. They could have been super lazy with that.
Yeah.
And probably still got away with it. Like, no, we built this set. We're going to reuse it for more than just one scene. Because they added more character to this base. It makes this base seem so much bigger,
right? Which is almost the opposite of the outside, which is just my shallow viewpoint, generic temple. You know what I mean? Just a generic temple kind of location where it almost feels like, is this even the same place? About too late in this movie, I realized the raid was like actually Shadaloo. I thought it was maybe something else. That was a part of it. But I also, like, what I thought was, you know, really nice too with the budget, and clearly they spent it all on the sets and stuff. The outfits, the wardrobe, a lot was good. Bison's outfit's great. They have props and props and props. He changes outfits at one point. You can see they made a whole bunch of different outfits for him just to have on set.
His fucking, like, lair or whatever, his boy room, his personal room, his space, his man cave, literally, like, had the logo everywhere, but they didn't just slap it. Like, they didn't put stickers on something. Like, no, they literally built shit with the logo. It was a goddamn, like, awesome looking light that was the skull and the wings. They made little, like, straws that had the logo on it, so he could drink
martini
his drink.
Straws.
Yeah, fucking amazing. Like, little shit like that.
The fireplace, which they use when it lights up, they then cut to him laughing at one point.
Yeah.
Kind of, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of details in this. I don't know if maybe, like, people on this, watching this on the surface level would really appreciate. Like, at least they put the time in, they tried. You could think the plot's garbage or some of the lines delivered are bad, but at least, like, I can appreciate the set design, like the Mario movie.
I was gonna say that,
like the Mario movie.
Yeah, which is a movie that's worse than this one for sure. Also, its box office is less than this movie's budget, but
honestly, like, those two movies are very similar in terms of execution. Where, like, more, I think Street Fighter went more closer to the source material compared to Mario. Where Mario's like, fuck it, we're doing whatever we want. We're making a dinosaur movie.
Dinosaur New York.
And it's going to come out 3 weeks before Jurassic Park comes out. They did that. You know, they went for more of we're doing our own direction, which is cool. You can appreciate that for what it is. Whether they executed it well and it's good, I don't know. But they definitely went for a more like, no, we're going to have some characters do their own thing. We're going to kind of change it up from the video game. But in the end, they kind of did tie it up and gave everyone the video game-esque. Like, it's weird. Like, people were all of a sudden shirtless, and it was awesome.
Right. This whole movie, I'm like, they're probably not, like, they're not really even fighting. So even when they do, they're not going to do the moves. But then, sure enough, like, later on, like, I see E Honda do a very quick 100 hand slap, which is just pantomiming it to Devin. That kind of thing. Or, like, I'm pretty sure I saw either Ryu or Ken do a Shoryuken, which is the jumping uppercut. And then, like, I'm like, Jean-Claude Van Damme, like, he's a fighter, he can do this shit, he's an action star. He's not going to do a flash kick, and he does a flash kick. Granted, it was really quick, because it's kind of hard to actually do that in a fight. Video games are video games. It's not real. You know what I mean? But
they probably wouldn't ever do that fight, or that move, like if you fight 100 people, I feel like you maybe use it once. Like, and very situational. Yeah. And you're also, I feel like there's more chances of you to fuck that up or someone to just counter it.
Now, granted, they didn't do, like, any of the, I don't want to call them, like, supernatural, but, like, Ryu or Ken didn't throw a fireball. Guile didn't do a sonic boom. They'd have Bison do kind of his psycho power stuff, kind of, but it's just electromagnetism.
They definitely went for more, I don't want to say realism, but like realism approach to these characters. Like, there was some ground of, these are normal people for the most part. They could be action heroes in terms of their, not supernaturalness, but their uniqueness. Like Rambo, right? Rambo has no powers, but he's a badass, and he's going to do some shit that me and you couldn't do.
Right.
Like, we could have been maybe the dudes in the UN there, or AN, whatever the fuck they're called, holding the AK, and
then Jean-Claude Van Damme is John Wick.
Yeah, like there's another level of, like, skill. Yeah. It's more skill based, less of, oh, I'm this good because I'm half god or something.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I appreciate that. Like, they're trying to ground it in some sort of reality that maybe we're used to. So, and they definitely, like you were saying earlier, this is a action movie first, video game movie second. And I think the Mario movie is the same example, where it's like, no, this is a adventure, dinosaur themed movie, video game movie second. Yeah. Even though it's fucking Mario.
Exactly. She would think. But we talked
when the
about
Mortal
that.
Kombat movie, in comparison, for looking at these 90s movies, Mortal Kombat's like, no, we're a video game movie first. Action, martial arts film second.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
For better or for worse. It shows.
Yeah.
And you can say the same thing about these movies where like, yeah, this really, at moments, like, if Street Fighter didn't exist and they made this movie, it still could
You wouldn't question it.
You wouldn't question it. It's cool.
Yeah.
But it
Like,
also...
weird that they're giving all these people names, but sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and then it's almost like, I don't want to say to the detriment of the gaming stuff too, but like, as I mentioned earlier, like, they changed a lot of, like, they made characters fit the story the way they wanted it to, right? Like, Chun Li, they wanted to have a reporter character, obviously, so they made Chun Li the reporter, right? Instead of being Interpol, because then, I mean, I guess that'd be another story about, like, Interpol versus whatever AN is supposed to be. Maybe there's some bureaucracy fighting over who gets to take down Bison. Maybe that would have been interesting.
Also, there's maybe copyright issues with that. I don't know if Interpol has copyright ship or maybe like they're.
I mean, she's Interpol in the game.
They easily too in the like this is a '90s thing, especially with the fall of USSR. They easily could have been like, nope, this is taking place in Russia. This is the UN. You know, I actually appreciate that they're like, nope, this is all fictional shit. There could be similarities, but it doesn't mean anything.
The one weird thing, though, to me is that, like, they really did just make Ken and Ryu and Ken, Ken, Ryu, whatever. They really did just, like, make them random people.
It was like they were thieves or whatever, right?
Yeah, they were con men, like, but
yeah.
like, but we steal from bad guys. Like,
okay,
no, Ryu is so, like, the cool dichotomy between the two characters is that they were trained by the same master, that's why they fight the same. And in actual real life reasons, Street Fighter, the original, was a single player game. It wasn't like fighting games all stem from Street Fighter 2. The whole idea, it's like, that's a prism. You shoot light through it. Street Fighter 2 is where all that light condenses back again, right? It's all like that. So prior to that, it was a single player game. You played Ryu and you fought other characters. There was a 2-player mode, but the other person was just a different colored Ryu, and that's where Ken comes from. Gameplay reasons, that's kind of the legacy inspiration from that. But story-wise, they trained from the same master in Japan. Ryu is from Japan. Ken is from America. They're best friends. Even though they have the same exact moveset, the difference is that Ryu is all about respect, honor, and restraint, and Ken is about freedom of expression. They're two different ways of looking at the same stuff. But, like, story-wise, they're martial artists. Ken maybe moves back to America or whatever, and then they obviously fight people in Street Fighter 2 together. But they're not like, yeah, let's just try to rob someone. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, that's weird to me, but, like, the story-wise, they clearly wanted to have some type of character, because their role in this film makes sense for having characters that, if this wasn't Street Fighter, taking that aside, it makes sense. You have kind of people that kind of work their way in, they're kind of being used, and they also kind of, like, make confusion amongst the bad guys. They kind of worm their way in. I'm using a hand motion of worm.
They play both sides.
In a sense, but they're always the good guys. But it's confusing sometimes to the good guys.
It's also kind of that was one of the goofier parts of this plot, which I was okay with. It's just kind of funny to think about, was like, they kept saying, like, we weren't even supposed to be here. Like, this was such a bad idea. And, like, in the end, they're like, they actually split at one point, remember? One of them was like, oh no, like, I don't give a fuck. We got our money, let's get out of here. Or, like, this is already insane, let's get out of here.
We came here by accident.
And didn't they later say, like, oh, people are dying? They're like, yeah, they get paid to do that. And I'm like, yes, agreed. Yeah. At this point, I would think that the battle's almost over, too. I'd be like, do we really need to go back in there?
Yeah, exactly. Which leads me to my best part. The best character in this movie is Zangief.
Yeah. Well,
100%. Okay, besides...
There's another character I haven't even talked about yet.
Really?
We know.
Oh, he's been looking at his fucking phone the whole time, watching everything about this guy. But besides...
We'll get to that.
And I'm not talking about Bison or Guile, which are obviously our main actors here, but taking those two people aside, because I actually did think Raul Julia acted really well in this movie.
Yeah.
Over the top in many ways, but, like...
in a good way.
He captivated... the scene, me. But Zangief, whoever this guy is, I'm surprised you didn't look him up too, because you liked his shorts at the end.
Oh, fucking his short shorts? Bring him fucking back. I need those.
He played it very well. I mean, Zangief is supposed to be a stereotypical big, strong Russian USSR loving man that might be dumb in a sense, right? But it's always played it for comedy in movies or and stuff like this. But in this movie, it was actually done kind of well, and it wasn't like the very stereotypical. Even we saw Black Widow earlier, and minor spoilers. There's a character like that too. Where some of the
I feel like Americans have done that.
Simple-ish English type of Russian big man, strong man, maybe not super smart type of humor is more focused on this isn't like home. This isn't like red vodka. Like not in this movie. I hope that comes across okay. That I'm trying to make this point across. In this movie, it's like none of that stuff. You wouldn't even maybe know he's a Russian. Besides the fact that you could pick up
he's more
his
of
accent.
just a big dumb brute kind of character, and less a Russian big dumb brute. But I know what you mean. I think that's a stereotype that American cinema has done, especially after the fall of USSR, maybe even during that, because Russia dumb, communism dumb. We have to make sure that they're dumb and so much different than us. Look how crazy it is over there. And then maybe after the fall of USSR, maybe they try to humanize them a little bit more and being like, yeah, they're dumb. They don't understand our culture, but in time they will. And it's less about like, no, let's learn about their culture. And I always find that funny that in a lot of these American-made, Russian-based, or have Russian characters or whatnot, it is always that stereotype of like, they come from a place that's cold and different and not necessarily bad, but like, our way of life is so much better.
Right.
So like, we don't even ask what their way of life really is.
When you envision the USSR, you think of barren tundra and steel factories.
Yeah.
And then people inside maybe drinking vodka. But, he was great, which is what had reminded me of you, because you said earlier, we're not getting paid for this. He said something like that too. He's like, you got paid.
Yeah,
He was just being played a fool. He thought he was one of the good guys, and he just wasn't.
Like, and then immediately when he figures it out, he's like saving everybody, and no one like tries to fight him, which I thought was cool. Like, I've seen that in movies before too, where like the bad guy is trying to change, and he's like, it's too late for that. They're like, no, who gives a fuck? I'm gonna save the day.
Yeah,
everyone loves him.
I'm gonna hold up this door while then two skinny boys also pretend to help.
Yeah.
But
he had to, and I was hoping for him to take his shirt off for the entire film. I'm like, if he doesn't take his shirt off, that's going to lose a star for me. And they eventually do, and he fights the sumo guy.
E Honda.
And they do a fucking Godzilla reference, which I was not expecting. And I still don't know if this is tasteful or not. I'm not Japanese. I'm a white American, so I really have no stakes, or I can't really like solidify an opinion for you, but like they spoke Japanese. The only time in this movie they spoke another language.
There are Japanese people speaking English, and the AN,
and this scene specifically, they show subtitles. I'm like, wow, they're showing subtitles, and like they were speaking Japanese. I'm like, okay, this is different. Like I wasn't expecting anything of it. And then they did a cut to a like they were fighting on the set of Bisonopolis, and they literally have actual Godzilla roars in it. And I'm like, I don't know if that is like awesome or like kind of bad taste.
I think it's just supposed to be awesome, like a hilarious.
I'm saying the fact that they set it up with like, oh, they're speaking Japanese. They could have done that joke without adding the Japanese to it, to be like, hey, it's like those Japanese monster movies, or monster movies, whatever. But I still thought, regardless, I'm like, they did show it, and I saw that he was shirtless and they were wrestling on a set. I'm like, that's funny. I like it, generally speaking. Yeah. And the only thing I didn't like about his character is that weird, like, hair they gave him. Chest hair. He didn't need it.
He's supposed to have a gigantic, like, of chest hair in the chest. But that looked much more like they just someone glued it on lightly,
Someone should have said something.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Someone, either the director, someone on set should have been like, that doesn't look good, take it off.
It's a wig for your chest. Especially because, like, there was like a giant cowlick of one.
Yeah.
And
like not even I've seen.
But the point is that it looks like everything else was shaved except for the super long chest hair. Like if you're letting it all go, you're going to have like a spread. You know what I mean? This looked like it was manicured but bad.
Yeah. It looked really bad. Looked fake.
But he was awesome.
He was awesome regardless.
And he looks the most like actual
in terms of body type and everything.
100%.
Yeah. Closest as you can get I mean, because those in the game, no one actually can have the dimensions that they have. But like that's the closest you can get.
Right. And I've been then putting him aside. Then wardrobe wise, obviously Bison looks the second best or the best, however you want to categorize it for sure. But who else we got in this movie? We mentioned Ryu and Ken.
I want to talk about Vega because he's fucking handsome.
All right, go ahead.
As soon as I saw him, I'm like, or as soon as he took the mask off, because he was already ripped.
Yeah.
Up until that point where we first see him, everyone doesn't
He might be the second most ripped person in this movie.
Because up until that point in the movie, when they first show him and he's shirtless, he still has a mask on, I was like, okay, he worked out for this film. Maybe other people did too, but he put in the work. He cared. He method acting. All right, he getting in there. He had the muscles in the muscles on like on his chest there. I'm like, that's amazing. Because the other guys were like jacked, but they were tone jacked. He was jacked. Like the Incredibles character, Jack.
Sure.
And then when he took the mask off, I'm like, holy shit, this man might be the most handsome man I've ever seen on screen. And it just blew my mind. My jaw was to the floor.
So Vega is like a Spanish, from Spain Spanish, I don't want to say like flamenco dancer or anything like that, but that's the air and vibe he has. He has a giant one claw and he's got a metal mask, and that's kind of his shtick. And he's always shirtless.
Yeah, but the actor, Jay Taveri, he's an Navajo Nation American actor, and he's 50 now. He's still fucking gorgeous. I don't get it. Like I want to meet this man and be like, what did you do? What there's gotta be something you put on your face every night.
He would have been like, what, 25 when this movie came out?
95, yeah. So 20. Right. So he's in his prime. Because they say your
late 20s?
Late 20s is when you're the most attractive, according to my research.
That's what I feel.
Yeah. But, no, I'm like, he's still beautiful now, and I'm like, I want to know, like, what his routine is. Yeah. But I wanted to give him a shout out, because I would love, I want random people to come on the show one day. That's like my dream, is we find like the most obscure actors from these video game movies to come on and be like, just tell us about the Street Fighter movie.
We'll put him on the list for sure.
So shout out to him.
Yeah, for sure. But that also makes me want to mention too, like, this cast and all these people, like the extras as well, extremely diverse. Street Fighter, 2 obviously, and even the original in a sense, but Street Fighter 2 is like, the subtitle of the original edition of Street Fighter 2 was World Warriors, because it was all about, there's the memes of China, Brazil, the stage selecting
USSR.
Thing. Exactly. USA, Japan. Everyone is from a different country. And while, yes, like they had a Navajo guy play a Spaniard in the movie, like, but they still generally had those elements in. Even the AN
for
had
the 90s, though. Like, for the 90s, that's impressive.
Yes, maybe
obviously. Now, I think you gotta do a little more. But for 1994, pretty like, I'll give, this is also go back to Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat, I think, did a good job of trying to at least diversifying. They didn't have all white people when they easily could have. I think in the 90s that probably wasn't necessarily always the case, unless you're like
didn't feel like it was necessary, perhaps, for movies. But even then, like, the AN had a lot of female soldiers in it that weren't even like necessarily up close to camera to show them. Like, I saw plenty in like the backgrounds and stuff. Like, they definitely went out of their way to make this a very diverse movie, and I was not entirely expecting that from this 90s movie, like you were saying.
It's almost like these video game movies are almost sometimes ahead of the curve of what video games were in terms of diversity. It's kind of crazy to think about, but when I think about it, it kind of is that. At least these early video game movies, I feel like there's more diversity in these than like early on video games. Not saying now, I'm saying like back then when the video games were popular, it was mostly.
That also makes me realize too, and I kind of realized this a bit with the Mario one, but some of these early, maybe it's just these two, maybe Mortal Kombat as well, I'll throw that in there, feel like they're trying harder than like the Tomb Raider or the Resident Evil movie was at just being a movie that's fun, let alone like, I feel like this is a better video game movie than Tomb Raider or Resident Evil.
It has more of that 90s flair, and I think that has something to do with it. There's so much good fucking shit in the 90s. Like, that's why I wish I like was old enough to like go to the movies in the 90s. Like, I can list off a whole bunch of movies, and most of them came out in the 90s. All of my favorite shit. And I think that has something to do with it. I think once you got into the 2000s, I think people are trying to, like, go a different direction with films. Either
Also lots of digital.
Change things.
Hurts early films, for sure.
So I think that has something to do with it. I think maybe that's the difference. And I just think, like, how movies are made in the 90s compared to even the early 2000s is just different. Sometimes you get a blend of both. Like, for example, I think The Matrix is a good example of, like, it has that late 90s flair.
It holds up a lot.
But it holds up a lot because of it. But also has moments of touching into, like, the new age when it comes to, like, internet and shit like that, in terms of what it was trying to talk about. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. It is weird to see, like, that these movies weren't that far away, though, from, like, Resident Evil. But Resident Evil also has that, like, early 2000s, late 90s touch. But then immediately goes away from that once we get into the sequels.
Right, which is very weird.
But I think it has something to do with just, like, what type of movies people are watching in the once we get into the mid-2000s. People care... You have Pirates of the Caribbean and all those kind of movies, these big action movies with sets, but also a lot of CGI, well-done CGI. Like, we see Prince of Persia. We liked Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
But was not made the same way these movies are made.
100%.
Not written the same way. They know how to write action movies at this point. You know, they have, not saying they didn't know how to in the 90s, because you had movies like Indiana Jones and stuff, which are well written, real good shit, really original shit. But, like, I just feel like, there's definitely a big difference, and I feel like most of it just stems to the technology and just, like, what kind of things people were into back then.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously it is a bit of a, I want to say, too common or the idea of, like, the action movie in general is always going to be a Stallone or a Schwarzenegger action movie from the 80s and the 90s, right? That's just, when people think about it, that's what they think about that time.
They literally have action
even
heroes,
though there isn't gonna, even though there are plenty of action movies, many much better than those old movies in some regards, nowadays or even in the 2000s, the idea of the sweaty muscle bro action person
is gone.
Is from the 80s is what you think of almost first and foremost to a lot of people. And that's definitely of that old previous era for sure.
That's a good point, because, like in the 2000s...
This is 100% that. I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, you don't have those people in the early 2000s. You have more... just not regular people, but they're not all bodybuilders, the action heroes. You have... I'm thinking of, like, movies like Underworld, where, like, it's a badass woman, gothic kind of film. They're doing more different kind of shit. You know, that's
you
think
get movies like Blade,
even Matrix,
and, like, Hellboy.
In Matrix, like, Keanu Reeves isn't, like, ripped in that film. He's kind of just an average adult dude doing shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think you're right. I think it turned into more of a, like, you don't have to be this ripped guy to be an action star.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a dude to be an action star.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
But
speaking about dudes, let's talk about the story of this movie. That was a really good segue. There are dudes in the story. Even some dudes and some not dudes. The story is okay.
It moves shit along.
It's serviceable, and it gets to all the good shit at the ending that we enjoyed.
Yeah, I like
even throughout. There were plenty of stuff to like in the movie throughout, but, like, it's just a way to just pit all the good guys against the bad guys type of thing at the end.
I like the last 30 minutes the most, and I think it's because there is no plot at the end. It's just, we must defeat him
and then get out, and save the hostages. Essentially,
I didn't even give a shit about the hostages. I forget they existed half the time.
Yeah, and they were extras.
I'm like, they could have been gone or just not talked about again. And if they're like, we just need to invade to attack them and take them out, cool. Yeah. That works too.
Yeah, which is a very 80s, 90s action movie type of thing, right? Just
blow up the base.
Blow it up. Essentially, Shadaloo in this movie is a real country, apparently. Bison is the dictator of it.
It's the ABBA song, Shadaloo.
Yeah. I think he conquered some things, I guess, or something, more than just Shadaloo itself. Now he has a whole bunch of hostages, and he wants $20 billion to set them free.
To his PayPal account.
Yes.
His Venmo.
He wants it wired to him. And then you got immediately Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is Guile, the All-American, I think he's supposed to be Air Force. His stage in Street Fighter 2 is an Air Force base.
I mean, this one, I think he's just the guy.
He's just the guy, yeah.
He's
the military commander. He immediately does a WWF, I forget what the term is, where you call them out.
It's an intro. It's like literally like the introduction to the fight.
Yeah.
And that's really early in the film. And that's when you should know early on this film, like, don't take this film seriously. Because, like, he takes over they're supposed to be doing an interview, and he's like, he grabs the mic, like The Rock or whatever, and looks at the camera.
And calls out Bison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who then immediately uses, which it was his plan to do so, because he knew, apparently, how, petty and sensitive Bison is about him being a dictator.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And being, you know, like, whatever. But he then, Bison hijacks the satellites and then talks right back and then says, now you have 72 hours or I kill the hostages.
Yeah, Bison literally was like, I'm pussy? No. I'm not taking that shit. I don't care if this is on a random TV channel.
I might be baby, but I'm not pussy.
I'm not. Exactly. But yeah, I like the idea too that, like, yeah, this is some random channel. Like, just change the channel, bro. But I'm like, I don't give a fuck. It is so WWE. It's just like, He's like, no, I'm going to intercept that fucking signal. I want to talk directly to him.
Yep.
I'm going to FaceTime his ass
because
on live television.
Guile wanted to do so because he wanted to be able to track the signal back and find Shadaloo Base or whatever Bison is. And then we're going and we're going. We see Cammy. She's a British, which is funny because in the story of the games, she is was one of Bison's mind-controlled soldiers.
Oh.
The dolls, all these women, which she considers her sisters. Final character in Street Fighter 4 was such a disappointment because it was just a random one of them and it played like Cammy and people are disappointed. In any case, DeCapre is her name. Yeah, she is just one of the AN soldiers along with Guile and they're doing stuff. Chun Li is the reporter that we mentioned, and not anyone cool, but she also trained and fought and stuff. And then I think we then cut to Ryu and Ken trying to make a deal with Sagat.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Which goes south. They tried to sell them junk weapons.
Yeah, and they have the fight there, and they were hyping this shit up, and then the truck comes.
Right. We'll wind it back a little bit, because in between that is when Sagat, gets the upper hand on them, captures Ryu and Ken. You're going to fight Vega.
They did the ball bit with shooting the ball out of the gun twice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that one wasn't a knee slapper, y'all.
Yeah. They set him up. Okay, we go to fight Vega. Vega is one of Sagat's guys. The guy Devin mentioned earlier. He had a chubby on the whole time for him. Mm-hmm. But then, as soon as we go to start the fight, and this is what kind of made me think, oh no, are we not going to get any fights in this movie?
Yeah, it was a little nervous.
As soon as we went to go start the fight, cock block because a tank flies through. Because I guess we're actually in Shadaloo, I think. I'm not
nearby.
sure.
It was like
somewhere nearby.
Yeah.
Which I think is also supposed to be near Thailand.
We're in Thailand.
But,
we'll just say we're in Thailand.
That's where Sagat's supposed to be.
It's funny that, up until the end there, where I was, getting nervous they weren't going to show any fights, it reminded me of how, in the Mortal Kombat movie, they did all the fights no matter what. And we had some real bad fights.
Just
Kano, Kano and Sonya Blade. That fight was embarrassing.
Yeah.
To probably film, to then show to your distributor and be like, "Yup, everything else is fine. Some of them are good, but some of them are fine. But this is awful." And I'm like, they should have did that. They should have a fucking truck come in and stop them because that was so bad.
A tank that has 2 gigantic missiles on it, which technically were sticking out in front of the actual head of the tank.
Yeah,
those crashed through the walls first.
I just like how he just jammed right through it.
You're all arrested.
It's like we were like classic America, just coming in and be like,
"You're arrested."
Yep, and I loved it.
But now we are at I guess AN's POW camp, right?
Yeah, and they treat everyone like shit.
Yeah, even people that just happen to be there. There were people, I guess, just betting on the fights. You know what I mean?
I mean, if it's all Consented, I think it should be fine. It's like betting on MMA fights.
There's obviously something that's just implied, whatever. Or maybe we missed something. Who knows? It's one of these things, as we mentioned in the Resident Evil movie. It's technically a little bit of a plot hole, but it's in service of the movie. I don't care, and it's cool, right? So now we kind of get like, okay, Guile kind of notices that Ryu and Ken are fighting the people that they arrested in prison because they get into a prison fight. Okay, maybe I can use them. Trust these two strangers to pull off something that involves freeing the bad guy he just caught, as well as pretend killing Guile to fake his death. You know what I mean? It's a lot of a trust there, but sure, okay. They do that. They basically, Ryu and Ken break Sagat and Vega out of prison and kill Guile because Sagat is going to take them to Bison's headquarters in Shadaloo. So they can track them and blah, blah, blah. Also, if Guile is dead, in quotes, then, you know, Bison isn't going to be too focused on that, and then blah, blah, blah. It helps them out, right? Yeah. I get it. It was a good plan in that sense. Maybe they should have sent Cammy in too or something like.
One thing I thought was funny while we were watching it was that, like, I'm like, okay, they're going to steal the keys during the fight, their fake fight, okay. And then we're like, okay, they're going to do it once they get out of the actual facility. They're like, no, we're going to get out of the same, we're going to unlock all the dudes, and we're just going to kick the door down, or kick the back door down, and then steal the truck itself, which I'm like, that's funny, because it's like I feel like it kind of plays on like the expectation of what we probably would do, or what we've seen other movies, where it's like, get out of the facility
4 miles
first.
Down the road.
Have the bus flip over, or whatever,
Which else, what I loved fucking too, obviously, you could tell because Ryu and Ken hammed it up a bit. They're last in line, so everyone else is on the bus, so they get into the fight, get the keys, they get in. And Ryu and Ken are just unlocking their wrists while they're sitting next to people that have free hands. They're just chained in a generous amount of length. They can't just be like, ugh, give me the keys. And then Sagat convinces them, in quotes, to toss the keys. They just toss it straight to Sagat. There's other people in this thing. Are you going to let us all out too?
That's what I'm saying. I would have let everybody out because it's strength in numbers in that situation.
Right. But I just loved it. Everyone else just sitting there be like, oh, I guess I'm just not charming enough to convince these people.
They're just there, dude. They're like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care.
They get out. Chun Li kind of sees some of this or something. She and Guile is dead. Cammy's like, call the paramedics or the medics. There's a woman with a bowl cut that shakes her head a lot.
Yeah, I saw that. That made me laugh. It's the details, man. This movie has so many good details that make me laugh.
This movie's great. You're convincing me that this movie's great. Chun-Li and her journalistic trio that consists of herself, E. Honda, who is a Hawaiian sumo wrestler, and Balrog, who is the American boxer, which is also a huge gambler.
Which I think of when I hear that, I think of the demon from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, true. Balrog is actually Vega's name in Japan.
Oh.
I don't know if it's supposed to be Spanish then or not. I don't know. But yes, they are journalists are in the surveillance van type of thing, and she picks up on that. And then later she goes to sneak in and finds that Guile has been just laying there in the morgue the whole time.
How long do you think he was sitting there?
Who's he trying to fool? Here's my thing is how many people were in on it? Maybe Cammy?
I think the security guard was, because the security guard gets to her. So he maybe was sitting there, but
so then you have the security guard just wait, so then you can sit out. You don't have to sit literally under a sheet.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe they're like, she's coming.
Oh,
so he's like, quick, go underneath.
She was tracking something though.
She's tracking the tracker. She's like, there's no person tracking the thing that they're tracking, which I thought was so goofy too. It's like, we're tracking the tracker.
Right. That's right.
And how do you find that? But whatever. Science.
She gets I guess forcefully removed, but she's trying to convince Guile that this is personal for her. And he's like, vengeance will only get in the way of justice.
Probably also personal for the people who actually live there.
True.
This guy is capturing. It's probably personal for the people he has in a locked room for 72 hours. I don't know. Maybe you're not as personal as you think it is, but go off.
Yeah, they just remove her. They don't arrest her or anything. But they know where to go, or at least Chun Li knows where to go. And so later now we're at like a Shadaloo like circus of sorts. Like it's a festival.
It's like a tent town.
Yeah, it's like they're like literally auctioning off
cool.
U.S. helicopters and shit, which I thought was
they had a camel.
Great. Yep, everyone loves the camel. It's got 2 humps.
Yeah,
it's like what a weird animal. There's water in that. It doesn't drink. Strange. Camels. Yes, and Ryu and Ken are like there because they helped free Sagat.
They vibing in that fucking tent, dude.
Yep. They're talking too much out loud about how anyone here will kill us. Maybe keep that to yourselves so no one thinks you're suspicious. Sagat's upset with a deal that Bison's making because Bison's just giving him basically monopoly money in a sense. Money that doesn't quite have value yet. It's hey, when I win, this will be worth
this
so
is
much
literally
money.
The people on Twitter telling me, like, you gotta buy this coin. I'm telling you, it's gonna be worth something.
Jack,
it's gonna be worth something.
Go fuck yourself, Jack. Bitcoin will not unite a divided planet. Shut the fuck up. But Bison Bucks, on the other hand, will, and that's what's offered to Sagat, and he very angrily and with a show of much bravado tries to leave, and then we got blah blah blah. But before that, I guess we should point out that our journalistic trio are doing a bit of a circus act to help.
They did a magic trick. I don't know how they did it.
Right. Crazy.
Movie magic, maybe.
What if that's like the angle we took, and for the rest of the movie we were like, alright, we need to figure out how they did this trick. But it's very clearly they just took her out of it.
Like they had to replace the barrel or something. I don't know. I was looking.
The barrel said Capcom on the top of it, which was a reference.
But they made too many they made movie film cuts. We couldn't get in the scene of how they did it.
Right. Exactly.
Someone figure it out. Someone find out. Tell me.
Ryu and Ken bumble their way back into the tent with the journalistic trio, and they get kind of beaten up and get sent to leave, and then they basically rat them out to the bad guys who are about to fight each other. Bison and Sagat's armies are about to attack each other in the tent. They're each cornered to one side and said, "Oh, there are spies among us," and they just
I would have let happen because like half of everything they had was in that tent.
Apparently,
their forces like. Okay, he's there. Bison's there. Shoot him. It's over.
Yeah. Whatever. Any case, yes, and then there's a little bit of a trick, or it sounds like
Chun Li's
in this
I know what I would have done?
thing.
If I was there, I would have snuck him in the back, shot Bison, and be like, they're going to think that crowd of people did it. They're not going to know who shot.
Yeah.
They just know they
had
had guns.
Bunch of innocent people get shot.
Not my pride. Look,
not my America. Even though I'm
trying to save the day.
Yes, Chun Li basically has a truck full of all of Bison's weapons from that raid or whatever. Maybe it was the weapons that Sagat was selling to him. Or something.
They had blew up something important.
Yeah,
but not too important because they still needed to have shit at the fortress.
Well, yeah,
needed a reason to go there.
Of course. But yeah, Ryu and Ken are heralded as heroes and guests because they pointed out that it was going to happen, I guess. But, so now we have our good guys posing as bad guys. They get put into gis, where you get your locker room. They're all in the base now. Chun-Li, E Honda, and Balrog are all captured as prisoners because they get captured anyway. So they're all there. And basically our AN people they've had this plan, secret boat, to knock out radar thing so all of our other forces can sneak in through the only other river into the base, which only has one entrance, apparently. We're all making this plan, and then there's some bureaucratic bullshit of like, oh, Anne says we're gonna give them $20 billion anyway. Say this. And then Jean-Claude Van Damme does a fucking speech, says, but we can all go home. And blah, 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 but we can all go home. And blah, 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 blah.
Everyone died for no reason.
But we can all go home.
I'm like,
actually,
you should have been there.
Good.
Or not, you should have been there. But like, America would have loved you in Vietnam.
No, okay. But, But yeah, in any case, they're all terrorists now because they decided to go against the wishes of the government or
They're all acting on their
organization.
own
yeah, they're a militia now.
They're militia, yeah, that's a better description.
So they enact the plan. So
freedom fighters.
Our characters are either in Shadaloo or on their way. And basically we get a big tour of all the giant fucking sets and all this cool shit. Oh, by the way, side story, one of Guile's friends, Charlie Blanca, was one of the hostages there, and Bison has a scientist that is incarcerated by him named Dalsim, who's not anything like him in the games, experimenting on him. He basically makes Blanca, the character Blanca, out of that. That's been going on. That's like a C plot, really. It only really comes up into the end, but it almost has no payoff in a sense.
Where does he go?
He goes back with Guile.
Oh, okay. I feel like he disappeared at the end.
But then, well, Dalsim has to go to atone for his sins or whatever, his awful things. Whatever. Yeah, that was a C plot that didn't pan out. But because they were going to have, I think the idea was that potentially that you would think, oh, Guile and Blanca will have to fight each other. He's going to fight his old friend that just cannot, but no, because yada yada. Stuff isn't going on with that. We don't even really explain that. It's not even all that interesting. But Chun Li fights Bison in his room a little bit, but he retreats to a room that's sealed off, and then gas comes in. Ryu and Ken blow their disguise super quickly. their fake allegiance to him very quickly. Mm-hmm. It's just honestly, there's just a whole bunch of action stuff shit happens here. Yeah. I don't even know really what to say. At one point, the boat shoots out the radar things, and it's like invisible, but not. And that's kind of cool. Bison has a giant, I guess, podium thing he stands in. Basically a Dr. Eggman flying ball thing. Yeah. That he stands in that has an arcade stick as his controls. And I love how dumb that is, but like, fuck it, there's so much like shit props going on around here. It kind of even fits anyway. And I just like that it's just a giant
if you're
reference.
Somehow taking this seriously at this point in the film, then I don't know what's wrong with you. You're being way too serious. Chill.
And it's fun. It's all just fun. The hostages are all just in a pit down there.
Even 8 in 72 hours.
Probably not. Yeah, and just action stuff happens. Just cool guy shit, fights and guns. Just stuff happens. And I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the last 30 minutes for me, like, I think was really, really solid.
This is where we get all of the fights. This is where Bison and
the
Guile
one-liners.
fight.
We get the
Ryu and Vega finally get their fight. Zangief and E Honda fight, but not a whole lot. And they don't get a resolution, obviously, because they're both essentially good guys in the end. Chun Li also fights, and there's just a whole bunch of fights. Bison at one point looks like he loses, but his suit brings him back to life, gives him adrenaline, electrostatic shocks, brings him back. He's got electromagnetism, and he fights Guile. Guile wins anyway. Although the post-credit scene has us believe that no, and he's world domination's on Bison's mind, as if it wasn't before. All the fights, everyone gets out, and that's the end.
Yeah, cool. They do the action pose at the end, which is cool.
Yep, the group shot pose. But yeah, that was the Street Fighter movie. We're looking at the list of all the movies we've done, and I definitely group this at least above the bottom of the barrel stuff. I feel like we've had nothing but real positive things to say about the movie, even though it is dated and goofy and not all that. It could have been great story wise.
It could have been real bad. It could have been, and it wasn't. It's watchable. That's the difference. Like,
I would watch it again.
Mortal Kombat Annihilation isn't watchable. Super Mario Brothers movie has.
It's just so weirdly interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So
if
I put it.
Watch it.
I say I'm saying I put it in that category.
Yeah.
If we have like a weird offshoot category, it's Super Mario Brothers in this film, and I think it's the '90s are to not blame, but rather the reason why it's so goofy.
Yeah, I mean, this is better than Assassin's Creed. I would even say this is better than the original Resident Evil.
I watched this movie before Warcraft.
Yeah.
or Monster Hunter.
Oh, for sure.
Assassin's Creed. Like
Yes.
now I'm looking at the list.
The second Tomb Raider movie.
God.
Hitman.
Yeah.
Man, we're going to be watching some better movies hopefully soon. But,
Like Dead or Alive.
yeah, maybe eventually. And we'll even do some spooky stuff for Halloween.
Yeah.
But yeah. Do we have anything else we want to say about this movie as we kind of hit the hour mark?
SMS stamp of approval, I think.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go watch this. I don't think we say that enough. Actually, go support a movie once in a while. Go watch
We
it.
rented this on Amazon. And say, hey, this movie is so great.
Leave a review.
in a sense.
Leave a review, but say the Sonic Movie Show sent you.
Exactly. SMS sent you. Why didn't they make more of these? Well, they did. There was some animated Street Fighter stuff. And then they made Street Fighter The Legend of Chun Li in 2009. That, looking at that box office.
That's awful.
Apparently that movie is very bad. So I'm so interested to see how that pans out if we ever see that. When we see that in the future. But, yeah. I would say this has been the Sonic Movie Show. We watched a good movie. And we had fun.
Wow.
Yes. We'll
It's
see you
refreshing.
next week.
It's refreshing.
I forgot how I exit these. But you know what else is cool and fun is our Twitter, at Sonic Movie Show. I'm on Twitter at Ethan Absolutely. And Devin is on Twitter at CURSONAFUN. Cursona Fun.
Yes, sir.
See you next week. Goodbye.
Au revoir.